Hello and welcome to Tea with the FT Adviser, a series of podcasts in association with the Women's Wealth Alliance. I'm Simoney, Kyriakou, editor of FT Adviser.
And I'm Vanessa. I'm chair of the Women's Wealth Alliance and the founder of my own firm, Hannay Wealth LLP. Today's guest is Emma Bull from the Consumer Duty Alliance. She's the head of engagement, and we're going to be talking to her about the work that she's also been doing with the Women's Wealth Alliance. I wanted to start, Emma, by saying, why was there a need for a women's group in personal finance?
I think there's a real shifting landscape in the wealth landscape at the moment, and a figure that you often quote, isn't it, is that 60% of UK private wealth is currently in the hands of women as it stands. What we're seeing is within the sector, it's not shifting at that same rate. If you look at who delivers the advice and then who receives that advice and who invests, there's a real misalignment. So that's what we were sort of really set up the Women's Wealth Alliance to sort of deal with, wasn't it? So the Women's Wealth Alliance has two key priorities. One is to help advice firms attract and progress women in financial services careers, and the other one is to help women engage confidently within their financial lives, and hopefully then be met by a sector that's welcoming and relevant to their needs.
And those are two really big projects,
Yeah,
two big ambitions, right?
Yes, exactly. Well, we're not lacking ambition, that's for sure.
So the starting point was really to try and get some data, because you'll know there's very little data. There has, since we started, the FCA have had an advisor survey out, and there's some interesting stuff that we can talk about that's come out of that. But we wanted to collect some data of our own, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we really wanted our actions to be data-led. I think we all intuitively know what some of the issues within the sector are, but you don't want to rely on your own intuition, so we wanted some hard data. So we kind of looked around, and we were sort of surprised that there wasn't really much there. Like you say, there is now the data that's come out of the FCA, but before that, there wasn't even any publicly available data about how many female financial planners there were. I know FT Adviser did several Freedom of Information requests, haven't you? And what we've seen with that is it's gone from 16% to 18% over a few years, which is a very small change.
Creeping up.
Absolutely. But what we really wanted was sort of data on women's financial journeys and experiences within personal finance. So essentially we commissioned YouGov. We did a survey that covered 540 women in the end. And this is where I've got to say I'm so grateful to all the support we've had. We've just had, haven't we, like just so many people reaching out, wanting to get involved from all different roles, because we didn't rely on YouGov's own survey panel. So we created all the responses ourselves, and we were really pleased to get sort of 540, because that's, you know, that's robust enough. What that data then told us was really interesting. Obviously, there's a huge amount in there. We can't go sort of into all of that today. But what really came out was financial services is a really positive place for women to thrive. There was really high levels of satisfaction around work-life balance, around development, around being supported by colleagues. And the striking figure that came out is 93% of financial planners would recommend it to other women. So that was the real striking stat. A huge amount there of endorsement.
But very, very few had actually come into financial services thinking, I cannot wait to become a financial advisor. So at the other end, people didn't really know what it was. Yeah. So there's that sort of knowledge gap at the beginning, isn't it? How do you know this is going to be a fantastic career unless someone tells you?
I think that the whole thing was incredibly positive. It was embraced by the women themselves. They actually want to talk about what they do and what they value in what they do. We had some fantastic quotes. I mean, people really took time to fill in the survey, didn't they, and think about their replies. And it wasn't just financial planners. We had everybody from, we had paraplanners, we had life and pension administrators.
Coaches?
Yeah, yes. Financial coaches,
compliance, and we also had a couple of regulatory people, I think, came back on the
wealth admin.
Had that experience,
yeah.
So it was a breadth of women from across the sector. But there was one glaring disconnect. If you talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah, so although we said 93% of financial planners would recommend the role to other women, 56% of women who responded to the survey said they wouldn't consider it as a career choice. So there's kind of three different areas in that. If we sort of dig into those reasons, so I think there's a cohort of women for whom there's no interest. You know, they're happy in their current role. They don't want to do a regulated financial advice role, and that's absolutely as you would expect. There's another cohort, so I think there's a sense of sort of like, I maybe could have done it, maybe a little bit of disappointment, a little bit of regret. If it had been a different time, if I had a little bit more confidence, if there'd been some better sort of frameworks, it's something that I might have considered and actually been really good at. And then I think there's a third cohort who are looking at financial planning as it stands within their organisation or an organisation they're looking at and thinking, the way that financial planning is set up there isn't for me. And that is often to do with working to target, having to create your own client base, having to study alongside full-time work. And those things aren't necessarily so attractive to women and probably not attractive to a lot of young people.
Generally young people are going to find that really hard. You want to start out somewhere, so you go to a big firm, but then perhaps that's just set in its own way. This is how we've always done it. It's how we're always going to do it. And a young person may think, well, I'll never be able to branch out on my own, or maybe it's going to take me too many steps to get to where I want to be. Absolutely. And they might just fall by the wayside, where actually you could end up losing some really good talent, but somewhere else or in a different field they might have actually thrived.
Yeah. So I think there's some hard questions that some firms might have to ask themselves if they're trying to attract women, but that's their model. How much do they want to actually attract women? So there was that. In terms of other barriers, we asked women, what do you think is the biggest perceived barrier from women outside financial services to why they wouldn't want to come into the profession? And 84% said they thought it was because women seeing it as being male-dominated, and that would put women off. And then 47% said that women might see it as a place not for them. I think the good thing about that is what the survey has absolutely proved is, although some areas of financial services are undoubtedly male-dominated, when women are inside the sector, they're thriving, they're enjoying it, they're endorsing it. So it's more of a perceived problem than a real problem. And exactly the same with women thinking it's not a place for them. Women are thriving, it is a place for them.
So how is the Women's Wealth Alliance then going to help bridge that sort of disconnect? Say, look, you guys, you 93%, you love it. Now go out there and spread the word. Are there ways that we can sort of help them spread the word or encourage people to say, hey, this could be a really good career for you. Learn from my example.
Absolutely. Well, I think what we're creating at the moment, and should be out by the time this podcast is published, is a women's guide to careers in financial services. So that's a female-focused lens. We're using the YouGov survey data, but on top of that, we did a whole load of role surveys where, again, thanks so much to all the women that took part in those. So it's really people talking about the roles through their own experience. It's women lived experience. It's so totally...
And it's detailed. You've got transferable skills. You've got an idea of salary
returner
ranges.
Pathways. How women come in, and what roles they can move into.
We've got a list of academies going into it, I think, as well.
Yeah, so. There's exactly that, where women can go if they're interested in these different types of roles. And we've got a whole load of interviews as well with women who are actually in those roles, talking about their sort of lived experience to kind of, put faces to it, bring it to life. Yeah. So I think that would be really positive. And obviously we really want to encourage advice firms to share that within their own businesses, have it on their website, and also within their local communities. If they do sort of outreach, if they're going to, like we've said, sort of Rotary clubs or local schools, PTAs. Universities, colleges, absolutely, all those kind of places they get into.
There's sort of short-term and there's long-term targets with it, isn't there? Yeah. There's the short-term where you want to do it through your own networks, but also I think longer term, we really want to talk to educators and careers advisors and possibly milk round organisers and things like that to get the bigger picture out there. But we are asking, Emma's always kept it, because whenever we've done these surveys and whenever we've done conferences and so on, we do get a lot of women saying, oh, it's really important, I want to get involved and I want to give back. And you keep a list, don't you? And you never let anyone get away with an offer.
If anyone says that to me, they're on the list.
No escaping. Someone else to send to you, because someone has actually emailed me about this.
So Emma keeps a list and we have a kind of working group, steering group type arrangements, and they are all going to be absolutely pivotal in this networking, because they'll take it back to their communities, their Rotary clubs and whatever else they might be doing, and look at showing people what a great profession it is for women and all the different choices that you have. I think one of the things we've talked about before, there's two areas that we think we need to get more data on, possibly returners to work. And I think that's, speaking to what you said at the very beginning, Emma, I think if you are a returner to work, the chances are you have rent or mortgage and nursery fees or all sorts of other things to pay for. And to go down the model where you're sort of thrown out and said, well, it's, like it was when I started, you just have to cobble together a client list and start hitting the phone.
Yeah,
I think it's
starting
very
from
fearful.
scratch again.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think obviously people have to have qualifications and they have to have experience and they have to be supervised. We understand all of that. But we really need potential employers to look at their structures and think whether or not that suits that end of the market. Because if an employer, a firm of advisors wants more women, and there are very real reasons why they would, then they have to look at designing the employment package to actually be appropriate for that level of life, that whatever stage of life that they're at.
So we're not talking just flexibility, because there's pickups to organise, but we're talking about sort of looking at making things a properly salaried role rather than hitting targets and sales targets and bonuses, because that could be quite frightening for someone coming back in. And I remember when I came back off maternity leave, I'd only been off for a year, but I suddenly felt, I don't know, what's been happening in the past year. And if someone's perhaps a bit younger, or it's a very new role, or it's a new firm, that confidence isn't necessarily going to be there, and you just get a few knockbacks, and then you think, okay, this isn't for me, I'll find something else.
Yeah.
Well, we also noticed that how many of the female financial planners were in their own firms, didn't we? Yeah. And that raises a question. Is it because, like I did, where I thought, this is a boys' club and this isn't going to change, so the only way I'm going to change it is to go out on my own. And then you take away the target issue, and you take away how you structure things and how you want to deal with your clients. I didn't like the model, whereas your clients had to be a certain size, a certain advice asset under advice, or you had to lose them. And I kind of thought, well, I don't actually think that's the way to progress. So I went and decided to do it for myself. And we don't know whether it's that kind of thing, or whether it's because women are saying, well, we can't really fit into that model, so we will.
A bit of both.
Yeah. So sometimes I feel I have no choice but to,
Yeah.
or is it that I want to be doing it my way? But there's definitely that's going on, and we'd like to maybe explore that.
And women often attract other women into their business, like you've got a female financial planning firm, perhaps not by design, but that's what's happened. And I think a lot of women are in that, and they also end up with a lot of female clients. Again, not necessarily saying I don't want any male clients, but a lot of women naturally gravitate towards them.
Yeah, I think there's some circumstances they do. And certainly one of my colleagues came to me because she literally was having an appraisal, and she said I was given a ridiculous target. She was still at the stage where she had a child in primary school, so she had to have a shorter day. And she was asked, well, you have to ask yourself, is this a job that can be done part-time? And yes it can, but only with an attitude that says we're going to make this work. So I think that's where I find there's still probably a bit of an old structure that isn't really healthy.
Exactly. And a rising tide lifts all boats, because as the whole nation moves to more sort of flexible working, where men get involved in the pick-up and doing all those sort of things and going to the child sports days, they will benefit from the flexibility as well. Absolutely. And they can be the fathers that they want to be, rather than the person who just goes out to work all the time and never sees the children, and which is like that old traditional model. Maybe that was even 30, 20 years ago. So I think, if we make things better and fairer for women, we're making things better and fairer for men, we're making things better and fairer for minorities, for people with disabilities. We're making it fairer for everyone. And I think, it'd be really interesting to see what this careers guide has to say. So it should be coming out kind of nowish in July, yeah?
Yeah, so certainly by the time this is published, we'd hope that it'd be out there, and we'd really encourage people to share it, to say get it out into the communities, get it out into their businesses, because a lot of work has gone into it.
And I think it's about also signposting our profession and all the different aspects of it that are very positive for women. It isn't just we want more women to come in. We're really proud of what women do in this area, and making sure that people
the way it's been drafted as well is, we've shared it within our group, so it's had loads of eyes on it in terms of, is this, are we describing things in the right way? Is this going to be attractive to women? So we really hope that it will be a really good resource. Yeah,
and also we're very jargon-led, aren't we, in personal finance? But you go outside of the bubble. Who knows what a paraplanner is? Nobody.
I've got such a good example, because the company I used to work for, they used to have an annual summer school for 16 to 18-year-olds, and you realise then what a bubble you live in. So children that were interested in a career in finance, and they'd come in and literally they saw accountancy on one side, Wolf of Wall Street on the other side, and there was literally nothing in the middle. And so many of them had their eyes opened. A lot of girls were, came into this as well. The role of a financial planner, the role of a paraplanner, role of wealth admin, just roles that they're obviously not hearing about it through careers advice either. So there's a whole education piece out there with careers advisors as well, in terms of, because those are the people that they're going to for this information. There's a real lack of visibility, I think.
It's working out that this isn't just a STEM subject. This is a subject that cuts across everything. Whenever I take on work experience, I take on maybe 2 or 3 work experiences every year. And, they want to be journalists. None of them want to be financial journalists. They want to be journalists. But, if we just put the word finance, it doesn't necessarily mean much. But you talk about money, you talk about the things that you want to buy, the things you want to do, the goals. This is where the financial planner comes in, talks about the goals. It's a revelation to people, I think.
You don't have to be good at arithmetic or mathematics. I mean, I think if you're that way inclined, it's often I like maths, so I love a spreadsheet and I like playing around with it in that way. But that's really 5 or 10% of what you do. A lot of it is about how you deal with people, what kind of listener you are, whether or not you're good at translating information to people. And there's an awful lot of transferable skills that I've known financial planners who come from all sorts of backgrounds, military or accountancy. Yes, sometimes they do know about numbers, but often all sorts of other areas as well. So I think you can unpick it, and if you're not good at the math side of it, you can get help on that. We all have software issues and software programs and things we can use to actually look at the math side if that's what you feel weak on. But it's about your people skills more than anything else. So I think there's lots of communication about that would be really useful. The one thing that did come out of the survey was there was much better representation amongst financial coaches.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they had specific reasons why they were involved in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we were seeing as well is that financial coaching is a really good stepping stone into regulated financial advice. I've spoken to quite a lot of financial coaches who they sort of started off coaching and then are actually like, oh, do you know what, I might take my exams, because it sort of gave them that, it's given them that insight and they want to go that little bit further. And I think for female clients as well, coaching again is a really good stepping stone into regulated financial advice. And if you've got a client that came to you and had financial coaching, they'd have a lot better financial understanding, wouldn't they? They'd come to you as a really good client, really well prepared, really well educated. So there's definitely, there's a lot of really good sort of crossover there.
I mean, we found that probably 2 of the areas that reason that financial coaching isn't is better represented is you don't have to be regulated. So there's one of the major barriers to entry has gone. So you can start that almost on the side of what you do, because people had come through from paraplanning and other areas, hadn't they, where they sort of started building up a coaching practice. So I think there's an area there, but also people like the idea of the delivery of behaviour and learning those kind of areas. But as a financial planner, if every client turned up for pre-retirement planning having spent 10 or 15 years working with a financial coach, that would be amazing, because they would understand why you're asking questions about longevity and risk and what kind of objectives. Exactly, all of those things would be marvellous. So we think there's a whole body of work of the areas where we have to connect financial planners and financial coaches, and also maybe looking at, we've got Sam Seacombe as part of our board, and obviously she's both a financial coach and a chartered financial planner, and using people like her and their knowledge to map out what good looks like is one of the major things we want to focus on next, isn't it? And bringing that forward so we can actually develop those relationships.
So that's more on the cards then from the Women's Wealth Alliance. Yes. So watch this space for 2026 or 2027?
I think, I'd say, I mean, we talk about doing things in the aspirations. I know. But also, it's just the pressure is on, because if more wealth is in the hands of women in the UK, we don't think it's a coincidence that we're now saving more on deposit than the Germans are. Yes. The women aren't investing, and
they just don't feel confident.
The growth agenda is there for the government, it's there for Treasury, it's there for the FCA. It's important to all of us to generate wealth, and the only way we do that is if women have got the confidence to invest.
One of the things we wanted to launch, wasn't it, was sort of life stage aware framework for financial advice firms, because a lot of financial advice firms would probably like to have more female clients. but don't necessarily have the sort of right framework, the right capability. You know, you're only going to get so far on hopes and wishes, aren't you? You might want to do something, but you need that. You know, it needs to be backed by data and insight, frameworks and processes. So that's one thing we sort of want to support firms with in terms of how can they speak to female clients in a way that's relevant, you know, that's not patronising. I think especially if a lot of firms are all male financial planners, they might not quite know, you know, what's the right sort of things that I need to be speaking to women about. So we definitely want to sort of have some support there.
But that's not all you're doing something else as well?
So we're also looking to launch a coaching and mentoring online hub. 51% of women within the survey said that they thought coaching and mentoring would be the most valuable thing to help them develop their careers. And it's not that there isn't stuff out there. There is so much out there, but I think sometimes women can be overwhelmed as to where to look. So we wanted to be like an independent hub where people can look, women can look where they know that things there are going to be relevant to them, maybe created a bit of a sense of community. We're also looking at launching a coaching and mentoring decision tree, because I think sometimes people don't know what coaching and mentoring really is.
Between the two things.
Yeah, they don't.
What do I need?
Exactly, to think through that process. And then also if they have to go to their business and ask for that, you know, they know how to articulate that. They know how to articulate what they want and understand what they want and need. So I think that will be really valuable as well.
Fantastic. Well, golly, what are you going to do for lunch then? Well, Emma, thank you very much. And thank you
for having me.
That's all we've got time for, sadly. But do follow for the next in our series on the Women's Wealth Alliance Tea with the FTA podcasts. You can find FT Adviser podcasts on all the usual channels. And for more information on the Women's Wealth Alliance, do visit the Consumer Duty Alliance website. Until next time.